And we are live. Okay. First of all, apologies in advance for not being able to get this video out. It's been a really tough week overall, and I was just barely reeling to get there. But yeah, truck race at Charlotte is on tonight, and I still haven't talked about the All Star race. So let's just get this one out of the way. Um, because there's plenty to talk about. We're going to be talking about both the truck race and the cup race because they were both held on the same day. That is Sunday. Um, so this is the newly repaved North Wilkesboro. And again, I am so glad this racetrack has been revived. A true legacy track for NASCAR. And I'm especially very happy that they're actually investing on this track to get it back up and running again with putting lights on the track and now um, also repaving it. Um, and with the repave, I have a very high hopes for this race, especially after watching how the speeds the speeds that they reach during practice, especially talking about both the trucks and the cup cars. Lap times reach 125 miles per hour and 18 seconds in practice, with some drivers even timing in under 18 seconds. The only downside was the weather because it was raining all week long, not just all weekend, like all week long. Like even the Cars Tour race that was supposed to be run midweek was affected. The All Star qualifying was affected too. I know the All Star Open qualifying was cancelled, and the qualifying for the main event was postponed until Saturday morning after the Truck Series qualifying. Like I know we have wet weather tires, but still, the next day, Saturday, because this happened on Friday. There wasn't much action on Friday because of the rain, and then on Saturday it just got worse because it started raining again in the morning, and the Truck Series qualifying ended up being canceled. The qualifying for the All Star race, or rather for the heat races for the All Star race, was still held though, as well as the truck race. And speaking of the truck race, let's just talk about the truck race now. Let's just get it out of the way. Um, the field was set by the metric score for the truck race with Christian Eckes on the pole. And it's important to mention, he has been undefeated on short tracks this season. He won at Bristol and Martinsville earlier in the year. So no doubt he was the odds-on favorite to win, especially after starting from the pole in this race. Nick Sanchez right beside him in second. Ross Chastain third, again running the 45 for Nice, who won the last race at Darlington. Ty Majeski fourth, Taylor Gray fifth, Ben Rhodes in sixth, then Chase Purdy, Tanner Gray, Grant Enfinger, and Ty Dillon running out the top 10, so 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th respectively. Stuart Friese in 11th, Corey Heim in 12th, Timmy Hill 13th, Matt Mills 15th, Lawless Allen 16th, Jack Wood 17th, now running back in the 91 for the fourth truck for McAnally. Then Brett Holmes in 20th, Tyler Ankrum 21st, Lane Riggs 23rd, Raja Karuf 24th, Matt Crafton 25th. Brendan Queen, aka Butterbean, making his Truck Series debut in the number one truck for Tricon. Brendan Queen, Cars Tour driver. He won at this track last year, the Cars Tour event, and was also the fastest guy in practice, one of only two drivers who cracked under 18 seconds in practice. The other, of course, being his teammate for the race, Corey Heim. But still, really impressive for Brendan Queen early on. He was definitely one of my drivers to watch for all race long. Dean Thompson 28th, Connor Jones 30th, Sammy Smith 31st in the number 7 truck for Spire, Stephen Parsons 33rd, Clayton Green 34th, Trey Hutchins 35th, and Dawson Sutton 36th. Speaking of Clayton Green and Dawson Sutton, just like Brendan Queen, they are two drivers making their Truck Series debuts. Clayton Green obviously in the 04 truck for Roper, and Dawson Sutton was running the 26 truck, which is a second Rackley Ward truck. So 37 trucks were entered, but due to qualifying being cancelled, one driver had to be sent home. And that driver was unfortunately Eric Almirola, who was making a one-off truck start in the 16 with Hattori. Hattori was making their Truck Series return too, after leaving after Tyler Ankrum left for McAnally. They basically scaled back their Truck Series operation. They went back to ARCA, Really tough break, especially since the 26 of Dawson Sutton was a new entry to the season, like the 16, so they had no owner points, and the tiebreaker was practice speeds. And since the 26 posted a faster lap than the 16, that's what sent Almirola home. So really unfortunate. I really wanted to see what Almirola could do. But yeah, the truck race, fortunately, it started as scheduled, but under very cloudy skies with a massive threat of rain and potential thunderstorms. So not a very favorable forecast, but at least we got some racing on Saturday. Stage 1, Ekes immediately pulled away with Sanchez starting second, but dropped back through the field. He dropped down to 6th after being passed by Chastain, Tanner Gray, Ty Dillon, and Corey Heim. And we do see a lot of movement on these first couple of laps. I mentioned Ty Dillon, how he got made it up to the top 5. He started 10th. And Corey Heim had also made it up to the top 5 after starting 12th. On the other hand, Majeski, I talked about Nick Sanchez falling down to 6th after starting 2nd. Majeski started 4th and dropped to 8th after the first couple of laps. Sammy Smith, he also got penalized for a start violation. He changed lanes before crossing the start-finish line, and he had to serve his penalty under green. He fell a lap down in the process. We also had some incidents. Ben Rhodes, with damage to his right front fender, while running 5th after making contact with the lap car of Brett Holmes, while running 3 wide in the middle, with him and Majeski battling for position. Fortunately, it didn't cause a tire rub, but it got me definitely very concerned for a while. So the action was starting to heat up when the caution came out for rain on lap 58. It was a light shower though, so the leaders, anticipating the race will be restarted, they decided to pit. Although a select few stayed out for stage points though, those guys being Majeski, Ben Rhodes, Taylor Gray, Ty Dillon, Roger Caruth, Jack Wood, and Connor Jones. Really surprised Ben Rhodes stayed out considering that he had a tire rub, but it all worked out for him in the end. Corey Heim won the race of pit road over Ekes and Chastain, but there were several drivers that were penalized. Stuart Friesen, Josh Riom, and Bailey Curry were penalized for speeding, and Lane Riggs also got penalized for a tire violation. So, we go to the restart, and we have a 3-lap shootout. Ty Majeski holds the lead, and he wins the stage, with Ben Rhodes finishing second. Despite having a tire up, he stayed out, and he got some much-needed stage points, so his gamble paid off. Roger Caruth in 3rd, Taylor Gray 4th, Corey Heim, Ty Dillon, Christian Eckes, Tanner Gray, Jack Wood, and Tyler Ankrum, they all round out the top 10. So now we go to pit road. Some of the guys who stayed out in the previous caution, they pit. Those guys being obviously Ben Rhodes, Ty Dillon, Taylor Gray, Jack Wood, Spencer Boyd, and Stuart Friesen. And everyone else stays out. This includes Ty Majeski, Roger Caruth, and Connor Jones, who now become the new top 3. They never pitted during the entirety of stage 1. It looked like they were gonna stay out for until midway through stage 2, I believe. Ty Dillon got busted for speeding. Unfortunate, so he was gonna be going down to the rear. Unfortunately, this caution was also extended due to Spencer Boyd leaving pit road with his jack still attached, which eventually he manages to get it off, but the caution is extended not because of the jack itself, but because of the fluid or oil the jack had. And then during cleanup, we have a lightning strike in the vicinity, which of course means an automatic 30-minute red flag. And then another lightning strike resets the clock, so we have to wait 30 more minutes. And then another, and another, and then it starts raining. So now the question becomes, are we even getting this race done today? Because remember, the All-Star Heat races are being run later tonight, so there's a chance that if Mother Nature does not let up, we might see the remainder of this truck race postponed for Sunday at noon. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened, because the freaking track was flooded, and I mean flooded. Arguably more rain than the Chicago street course last year. There were up to 5 inches of rain. There were tires floating. Teams and drivers were scrambling to save their equipment in the water. So, because the track, it was basically pouring on Saturday, not only was the truck race postponed, the heat races were cancelled as well. So the lineup for the main event was set by the qualifying speeds. So Joey Logano, who was supposed to be the pole sitter for Heat 1, will now start on the pole for the main event. And as for the All-Star Open, the lineup was set by points because not everyone managed to qualify. So Ty Gibbs will start on the pole for that event. So for Sunday, though, the weather looked much better. Dare I say, a stark contrast to what we saw the previous day, Saturday. All the water was thankfully rained away. North Wilkesboro was now hotter and slicker. A bit cloudy, but it was sunny, as well as being now a green track because all of the rubber was washed away. So yeah, this was Sunday, just a stark contrast. It's crazy that Friday and Saturday was all rain, and then Sunday there was not a single drop of rain on the track. So eventually, after all the cleanup and weather delays, the race resumed officially on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. And we are now at the start of stage 2. Carruth takes the lead from Ty Majeski. You remember Majeski was scored as the leader at the time. Tyler Ankrum third and Corey Heim fourth. But not for long. Majeski comes back a couple of laps later. And just as he's about to get past on the outside of turn 1, Raja Carruth gets loose and he spins out. So we have a quickie yellow. Some drivers pit during this caution. Jack Wood, Stuart Friesen, who pitted twice. Ben Rhodes pitted twice. Jake Garcia, Tyler Ankrum, Raja Carruth. Stuart Friesen got penalized for speeding after his second pit stop, so oof. So now we go to the restart. Majeski now has to contend with Corey Heim, who is on fresher tires, as well as Christian Eckes, who made it up to third. But Majeski manages to hold both of them off until another caution comes out 20 laps later for a lawless Allen spin. Then we go to pit road. Most of the leaders pit this time. Only the guys who pitted in the previous 2 cautions stay out. Those being Tyler Ankrum, Jack Wood, Jay Garcia, Ben Rhodes, Stuart Friesen, and Stephen Parsons. Nick Sanchez wins the race of pit road over the guys who pitted. Lane Riggs, Christian Eckes, Butterbean, and Grant Enfinger. Majeski and Corey Heim, they lose 6 spots each after both having slow stops. Probably they did make more adjustments, probably. Because I didn't have any reports of, and the Fox broadcast, it didn't show any replays that shows that it was due to a mistake. So I assume it was because they made some additional adjustments. Unfortunately, Butterbean Queen gets busted for speeding and sent to the rear, along with Ty Dillon for a second time, Mason Massey, and Matt Mills. Then we go to the restart. Tyler Ankrum has the lead with Jake Garcia in second, Stuart Friesen and Jack Wood battling for third, and then Nick Sanchez gets penalized for a restart violation. He changed lanes before the start-finish line. It was a close call, but NASCAR determined that it was a violation, so he falls a lap down. But fortunately, since it's close to the end of the stage and there are no lap cars in the vicinity for the leader to pass, he gets the free pass. Up front, though, Ankrum, he holds off Jake Garcia to win a Stage 2 that ended under caution after a Brett Holmes spin. So Jake Garcia second, Stuart Friesen third, Jack Wood fourth, Lane Riggs fifth, then Ben Rhodes in sixth, Christian Eckes seventh, Corey Heim eighth, Daniel Dye ninth, and Grant Enfinger 10th, who got a pretty close call with Stephen Parsons a couple laps before the caution came out. So we go to pit road again. Not many takers this time around. Only Matt Crafton, Matt Mills, Timmy Hill, Ty Dillon, and Mason Massey pitted, while everyone else stayed out. So now we go to stage 3. Tyler Ankrum has a slow restart, and he falls to third, with Jake Garcia taking the lead and Lane Riggs up to second. As the green flag run goes on, however, Corey Heim, he starts to move up through the field, making it up to second, only behind Garcia, before another caution comes out for another single car spin. This time it's for Connor Jones. And we go to pit road again. This time the leaders stay out once again, including Ben Rhodes, who was tight on fuel, but the team told him to go full safe mode instead. Only Jack Wood, Raja Carruth, Stephen Parsons, Ty Dillon, Tanner Gray, Mason Massey, Connor Jones, and Timmy Hill pitted. And Ty Dillon, for the third time today, got penalized, this time for too many men over the wall. Now we go to the restart. Corey Heim takes the lead from Jake Garcia, and he starts pulling away immediately, up to a 4.5 second lead. And during this run, we are treated to an amazing battle for fourth between Eckes and Butterbean. Butterbean obviously giving that 19 truck all he could handle. I think they even bumped and banged for a few laps. Unfortunately, the action was halted by yet another caution for a single car spin, this time Dean Thompson. And the leaders stay out, as they determine that with this caution they are good to go on fuel by this point, no more pit stops, and yes, even Ben Rhodes stayed out. So now we go to another restart, and Corey Heim continues to lead, with Lane Riggs passing Jake Garcia for second, who quickly faded out of contention. And with Corey Heim pulling away to a 3.5 second lead well on his way to victory, the battle for second heats up between Grant Enfinger, Butterbean, and Lane Riggs. In the end, Enfinger prevails, just as Corey Heim crosses the line to win his third race of the season. Wow. Like, what can I say at this point that hasn't even been said yet? I know it's starting to sound like a broken record, but, you know, Corey Heim, he won 3 races last year in 22 starts. He missed 1 race last year at Gateway due to illness. And he has already equaled that win total in just 10 races this season. You know, I thought after the season he put together last year, it would have been really hard to replicate that, especially after he did not win at all last year. Hell, even if he won at all, I wouldn't think he would replicate such a performance with such a crazy average finish. But so far this season, we're not even at the halfway point yet. And he has already equaled his win total. And he has looked arguably better overall in every single major statistical category than he did at this point last year. Wins, top 5s, laps led. Hell, we can even say average finish. I mean, we're talking about a guy who is putting up Christopher Bell caliber stats in the Truck Series. I mean, and I'm not even lying to you. Go to Racing Reference and compare Christopher Bell's stats when he was still a Truck Series driver to Corey Heim. So, we're talking about 2016, 2017 Christopher Bell. We are comparing him to Corey Heim last year, 2023, and this year. And no offense to Tricon Garage, because they are the Truck Series' flagship Toyota team, but in my opinion, they have never looked as dominant overall as Kyle Busch Motorsports was back in their prime years with Toyota in the 2010s. So, Corey Heim is doing all of this in arguably worse equipment than Christopher Bell had when he was with KBM. And again, I may be wrong. I don't know how much support Joe Gibbs Racing is giving Tricon right now, so I may be wrong, but that's just my perception because, you know, Tricon Garage is not owned by a Cup Series driver that's driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. So I don't know. I don't think Tricon Garage is getting as much support as KBM did when they were with Toyota. You know, support from JGR, obviously. So again, I may be wrong, but I'm just saying is, to me, Kyle Busch Motorsports was the better team when they were with Toyota, better than Tricon Garage, and Corey Heim is still putting up Christopher Bell caliber numbers with an arguably worse team than what Christopher Bell was putting back in 2016, 2017. The point is, Corey Heim is a stud. That's where I'm trying to get at, and he is better than we all thought. So. Anyways, let's take a look over the notable finishers of this race. The finishing results. Damn, I can't speak. Grant Enfinger finished second. Lane Riggs third. Brendan Queen, Butterbean, he finishes fourth. Definitely the driver of the day to me. I know I don't do driver of the day for the trucks or Xfinity Series races, but if I did, I would give this one to Butterbean. Sammy Smith also finished fifth after being penalized for a start violation at the very start of the race and falling a lap down early. He came back to finish top 5. Christian Eck is 6th. Nick Sanchez 7th. Tyler Ankrum 8th. Daniel Dye 9th. And Stuart Friesen 10th. Then behind them, Ty Majeski in 11th. Jack Wood 12th. Ross Chastain 15th. I mean, Chastain, I kind of expected more out of him. He ran top 5 early on, but after, the shuffle of pit stops, he just could not recover from that track position. He just could not pass guys like Heim or Eckes were able to. He finished 15th. Stephen Parsons 17th. Matt Mills 18th. Bailey Curry 19th. Matt Crafton 20th. Ben Rhodes 22nd. No doubt he was trying to save fuel there at the end. That's why he lost a couple spots. Chase Purdy 24th. Ty Dillon 25th after getting hit with 3 penalties on pit road that ruined his chance at a potential top 10 run. Dean Thompson 27th. Dawson Sutton 28th. Brett Holmes 29th. Thad Moffitt 31st. Clayton Green 34th. Connor Jones 35th. and Trey Hutchins in 36, the only DNF of the day, and it was due to a mechanical issue because of most cautions were single car spins anyways. Not that many carnage. I know the rain slash flood kind of caused a full reset as far as rubber being laid down for this truck race, but the track conditions on Sunday made the trucks more racy, more slipping and sliding, more bumping and banging. Tires kind of mattered, especially in the long run, but it was still hard to pass. Not because of the clean air though, but because of the track itself. This race had a weird mix of bottom lane being better at times, then is the top lane. From what I saw though, the top lane was a preferred lane for most of the race, especially on Sunday because there's more banking there. The bottom lane had the advantage on Saturday before the race was postponed for weather though. And you can attribute that to the track conditions changing from one day to the other. But still, there were several moves and passes for position being made throughout the field. To the point where I would say both lanes, you could work both lanes, but the top lane was still the preferred lane. And also, I know I don't say this much, but give some credit to the Fox broadcast. Yes, it was far from perfect, but they looked more engaged than usual. It was definitely one of their better broadcasts of the year thus far, which was not saying much unfortunately, but they didn't miss as much stuff as they usually do. So anyways, final thoughts for this truck race. Corey Heim is better than we thought. Someone signed him to an Xfinity ride expeditiously. I don't care if it's with Sam Hunt Racing or with Joe Gibbs Racing or whoever. But yeah, Toyota needs to do something with him. They need to move him up. They need to move him up ASAP. Well, now with the trucks out of the way, let's move on to the main event. The All-Star race. NASCAR brought a special softer red leather tire to use for both the open and the main event. The only downside, however, which I was excited about, don't get me wrong, but the only downside was that NASCAR was forcing the drivers to start under a certain tire instead of letting them choose, like, you know, what Formula One teams and drivers do as part of their race strategy. In the case of the open, of the All-Star Open, all drivers were forced to start with a normal primary yellow leather tire that everyone will start with. Yes, it's an All-Star race, but I would have still liked to see what that element incorporated as part of the race. But hey, at least we're getting tire wear and tire variety, and we saw some of that during practice. So again, I have very high expectations for this race. This race was also held under the clear sky, a clear sun. And talking about the All-Star Open, obviously, but also the main event. But yeah, there was much more sun than what we got at the truck race earlier this morning. Again, a stark contrast to how the weather looked like the previous two laps. Of course, All-Star Open qualifying was canceled due to rain, so the field was set by points. And Ty Gibbs was on the pole due to being the highest driver on points, not yet locked into the All-Star race last year. Not last year. Okay, let me rephrase that, because my notes are a bit all over the place. Ty Gibbs started on the pole due to open qualifying being rained out, by virtue of being the highest driver on points, not yet locked into the main event. There we go. Alex Bowman in second, Chase Briscoe third, Bubba Wallace fourth, Noah Gragson fifth, Austin Cindric sixth, Josh Berry seventh, Todd Gilliland eighth, John Hunter Nemechek ninth, Carson Hocevar 10th, Eric Jones 11th, Ryan Preece 12th, Corey LaJoie 13th, Daniel Hemrick 14th, Austin Dillon 15th, and honestly, I'm just going to say this because I was kind of paying attention to open qualifying, but qualifying was almost getting wrapped up, and it looked like Austin Dillon would get the pole for the open. And considering what we saw at the All-Star race, I feel like he would have had a huge shot to get into the main event if open qualifying wrapped up. Because when Austin Dillon was on pace to get the pole, there were like only 3 guys left to do qualifying laps. Could have been 2 or 3 guys. And then the rain came out. And then open qualifying was just cancelled because those guys were unable to make their qualifying laps. I believe Chase Briscoe and Ty Gibbs were among those guys. So unfortunately, a potential pole in the open for Austin Dillon turned into a 15th starting spot. So really tough for him. Tough break. But anyways, Justin Haley 16th, Harrison Burton 17th, Kaz Grala 18th, Zane Smith 19th, and Timmy Hill 20th, running the 66 part-time car for MBM Motorsports. So, 20 cars, 100 lap race, top 2 advance, plus the fan boat. The race begins, and we already have drivers slipping and sliding. John Hunter Nemechek went wide in turn 3, and he almost put Priest in the wall on lap 1. And then Timmy Hill, the only non-charter car who entered this race, he came down pit road after just 10 laps due to a mechanical issue, and the team lifted the hood up. Like, what is that team doing over here? What's up with those guys? They just didn't come prepared. He does come back, but he is 5 laps down, and he also has to serve a penalty for speeding on pit road. So when all said and done, he comes back 6 laps down to race leader Ty Gibbs, well out of contention, who by now has Ty Gibbs by now has opened up a 2-second lead over Bubba Wallace when the caution came out on lap 50. And this was the All-Star competition caution, the fun flag, you name it. This is basically the halfway point of the race. So everyone pits for a fresh set of tires, mandatory pit stop. But at the very least, they have the choice to go between the red leather tires or for pit for a fresh set of yellow leather ones. Ty Gibbs wins the race of pit road over Alex Bowman and Bubba Wallace. Noah Gragson up to 5th. Austin Cindric dropped to 6th. And Carson Hocevar dropped to 9th. So everyone decides to go for the softer red leather tires with the exception of Austin Dillon, Corey LaJoie, Todd Gilliland, and John Hunter Nemechek. And of course, the Fox broadcast, they gave us a massive heart attack when they made us think that the 23 team had put a yellow leather tire on the left front, with the rest of them being red leather tires when they were supposed to put all reds. Obviously, you cannot do that. All tires need to be from the same set. You cannot mix and match. So they would have needed to pit again. But upon further review, it turns out that it was the green marking on the left front tire, creating the illusion that the lettering on the tire was yellow when it was actually red. So the 23 team is good. And the 77 team of Hocevar as well, because they had that same situation happen to them on one of their tires. So no penalties, no one has to come back down pit road again. But when at first glance I thought 2311 had just done it again, and I was just like, how do you not notice the lettering color on the tires? But yeah, thankfully it was just a little bit of a heart attack. But we go to the restart. Ty Gibbs pulls away, but not for long, as some three-wide action between Carson Hocevar, Austin Cindric, and Noah Gragson ends with the 2 car being put in the wall and bringing out the yellow. He does finish the race, but he is multiple laps down, so basically out of contention, just like the 66. So this leads us to another restart, and the battle for second is on now because Ty Gibbs just pulled away between Alex Bowman, Bubba Wallace, and Josh Berry. Bubba Wallace takes second, but Alex Bowman tries to come back and make his move on the bottom, but he cannot quite seal the deal. This forces them in a 3-wide situation with Josh Berry, which the 4 car takes advantage of and takes third away from Alex Bowman. And this also brings Haley into the fold, who takes advantage of the situation, and he passes Bubba Wallace for 4th. The laps wind down, and tire wear starts becoming a big factor. The lap times start to fall off 1 to 2 seconds compared to earlier in the run, which you love to see. There was not much action on the track though, as Ty Gibbs cruised to the win, leading all 100 laps, with Bubba Wallace right behind him in second, also advancing to the All-Star race. And as for the fan vote winner, it came down to Bubba Wallace, Carson Hocevar, Alex Bowman, Noah Gragson, and Corey LaJoie. Now, obviously, Bubba Wallace is out of the running because he actually managed to advance through the open, so it came down to those 4 guys. And of those 4, it was Noah Gragson who came out as the winner, which was unexpected. Again, even with Bubba Wallace racing his way in, I thought that the fan vote would come down to either, I don't know, Carson Hocevar or Alex Bowman. But still, I'll take it. At least this guarantees that a Stewart-Haas racing driver will be on the big show. At least this guarantees that, you know, SA Tire will have one of their drivers in the big show, because all 4 of them were in the open. And even if they swept the open spots in the fan vote, that would still leave one of their drivers out. So thankfully, Stewart-Haas Racing has some representation on the main event. So it's Noah Gragson, Ty Gibbs, and Bubba Wallace advancing to the main event. Josh Berry 3rd, Justin Haley 4th, Again, Noah Gragson, he finished 5th, so he was the fan vote winner. Alex Bowman in 6th, his car just faded out in the long run, and he even hit the wall in the closing laps, which is why he lost out on 5th to Gragson. Chase Briscoe 7th, Ryan Preece 8th, Austin Dillon 9th, Carson Hocevar 10th, then Kaz Grala in 11th, Corey LaJoie 12th, Harrison Burton 13th, John Hunter Nemechek 14th, Todd Gilliland 15th, Daniel Hemrick 16th, Zane Smith 17th, Eric Jones 18th, Timmy Hill 19th, and Austin Cindric 20th. Both drivers finished multiple laps down after their respective issues. So, that was a nice quick little race. You know, getting the appetizer out of the way and getting a feel for the track before the main event. Obviously, 100 laps is a very small sample size, but what I saw in those 100 laps, it looked promising, especially with the softer tire and how much rubber was being laid down. This is what the track needed, especially after all of the rubber was washed out on Saturday. Rubber being laid down during the truck race, rubber being laid down for the truck race, for the cup race. That was great. So, with the Open now out of the way, we move on to something I like to call the Kyle Larson watch. Because while the Open was underway, Larson was just getting wrapped up with Indy 500 qualifying. And despite a rocky start to his weekend, where it seemed like he wouldn't be able to post a full qualifying run, he ended up making it all the way to the Fast 6, which is basically the final round of Indy 500 qualifying. So he had to stay on the track all the way until 6 p.m., making his window to make the All-Star race all that much tighter. He was initially projected to leave the track at 4 p.m. because he was not expected to make it to the top 6, but because he did, he had to stay an extra 2 hours. Fortunately, though, NASCAR helped him a little bit by deciding that they would start the race 50 minutes later to give Larson a little more time to make it. Again, people are going to cry Hendrick favoritism, but we are talking about a guy who's attempting to and could potentially win both the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. So, waiting 50 minutes for him to arrive because he's trying to make some motorsports history. This is not just NASCAR history. This is some motorsports history. 50 minutes is not that big of a deal. Again, it's just 15 minutes. It's not like they're just moving the race for like waiting until Larson arrives to start the race. Like, they're giving him some time to arrive. If he still doesn't arrive, then they're just gonna have to start the race without him. The only downside is that NASCAR set a precedent that they should do this for every driver, but considering that this is a rare occurrence that, you know, NASCAR drivers attempting that Memorial Day double, this won't happen all that often. I don't think it's something that they should worry about setting a precedent moving forward. That being said, there are a couple of things that piss me off about this whole situation, and this is mainly stemming from the logistics behind drivers attempting the Indy 500, Coca-Cola 600 doubleheader that I am surprised no one has brought up yet. Number one is the fact that the better you do in the Indy 500, in both either qualifying or the race, the more at risk you are of missing the start of the Coca-Cola 600 because of all the, you know, the post-race media obligations. I'm pretty sure IndyCar officials, they give NASCAR drivers some leeway because they have to make it to Charlotte, but still, it makes the window really tight. And yes, Hendrick Motorsports, they already announced Justin Allgaier as the relief driver for Larson in the 600 should something happen at Indy that delays his arrival to the track. But suppose something happens, then Allgaier will start the race. And even if Larson, you know, he shows up and he's subs in later on, he wouldn't get any driver points because he did not start the race, making his quest for the regular season title that much more difficult. Especially since the Coca-Cola 600 is the highest points paying race in all of NASCAR, with 4 stages instead of the usual 3, which means that up to 70 points are on the line. Larson could lose up to 70 points potentially of racing. This scenario could also set up for one of the funniest moments in NASCAR history, where Larson goes on to win the race, but Allgaier will be credited for what would be his first career Cup win because he started the race. But yeah, considering that Larson is right now the points leader for the regular season title, missing the Coca-Cola 600, missing the start of the Coca-Cola 600, even if he's subs in as a relief driver, he won't get any points for that. So, yeah, it will be really tough. I know and Rick Hendrick, I believe he went on to say that even if the Indy 500 is is delayed, that Larson would that he will still keep Larson at Indy to run all 500 miles. Um, but in the end, I feel like, Larson is a racer, and he has the spirit of a racer where he just wants to race as much as he can in a single day, and that obviously will mean that he will want to be on time for the Coke 600. So again, it would be a very tough situation if such a scenario were to happen. No, you could say move the All-Star race back to Saturday night, which I would personally love because I love Saturday night races and night racing overall. I would like for NASCAR to race more at night. I know they're allergic to because ratings, but again, night racing is such a vibe. And yes, night racing will partially solve the problem, but only for the All-Star race, since the NASCAR All-Star race and Indy 500 qualifying, they're usually held on the same weekend. Again, if the All-Star race was on Saturday night, this wouldn't be an issue, and Larson can stay at Indy all he wants without worrying about any other obligations, assuming, of course, he's not racing at some local dirt track somewhere in the USA later that night. Of course, not this year in particular, because the track was flooded on Saturday, but you get the point. But this still doesn't fix the issue of something happening during the main event that puts a driver's participation in the 600 at risk. But thankfully, nothing like that has happened to any driver attempting the double, aside from Robbie Gordon in the year 2000, where he just couldn't make it in time to start the 600. And hopefully it just doesn't happen anytime soon, because, in my opinion, if there is one driver that I feel can win both races, it's Kyle Larson. I believe considering that Kyle Larson already is a past winner of the Coke 600, and this is the best a rookie has qualified for the Indy 500, this is the best chance Larson has of not only completing all 1,100 miles, but also of just winning both events outright. If someone can do it, it's Kyle Larson. And another problem that I have, number 2, is the logistics behind Larson's relief driving in the All-Star race, or lack thereof in this case, because in his absence, while he was at Indy just practicing and qualifying, Kevin Harvick, he stepped in to practice and qualify the 5 car on Friday, or rather, practice on Friday and qualify the car on Saturday because, qualifying was postponed. And this was already announced a couple weeks ago at Dover that this would happen. But yeah, the idea of Harvick subbing in for Larson if he ran late to the main event, it was floated around, or just letting Harvick race the 5 car outright, and just let Larson, with its Indy 500 duties. But in the end, NASCAR's eligibility rules would not allow it, because Kevin Harvick is no longer a full-time driver in any of NASCAR's top 3 series, and that's just stupid in my opinion. Just how strict NASCAR's All-Star eligibility rules are. Because think about it. Aside from being a full-time driver, Harvick is retired. But other than that, he checks all of the other boxes that actually matter. Kevin Harvick is a past champion. He is a past winner of the All-Star race, which he has done multiple times throughout his career. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. He has the prestige of any other All-Star driver on the grid. Harvick is a true All-Star. And this discourages former drivers from making one-off appearances to compete in this race. Because if you remember last year, when Alex Bowman was injured, the idea of Jimmy Johnson driving the 48 car was floated around. And despite it being shut down pretty quickly and being a little too far-fetched, it would not have been possible either way, even if Jimmy Johnson wanted to. Because he would have to race his way through the open. Like, how does NASCAR look at this and say, yeah, it's fair? Because I remember back in the 2008 All-Star race, when Dale Jarrett made his final NASCAR start, it came in the All-Star race. If the current eligibility rules were in place, that would not have been possible. Because Dale Jarrett, he only started the first 5 races of that season, and then he never raced again until the All-Star race later that year, and then he called it a career. If the current eligibility rules were in place, Dale Jarrett would not be eligible, and he would have had to race his way in through the Open. His final career start would have come in a meaningless All-Star Open. He would have gone out sad. So, in my opinion, I say Harvick should have stood in as a relief driver. Of course, none of that happened because, in the end, Larson made it on time. But the fact that he put Larson on a pretty tight spot and he pressured him to be there on time, otherwise the 5 car wouldn't race at all, that was just stupid. And again, I don't know why NASCAR is so stringent on that. Like, they haven't changed the rules for this race on the fly before. Of course, I'm talking about that infamous finish to 2022 when Ryan Blaney thought he had won the race and took his window net down to celebrate. But it turns out NASCAR had thrown a caution before he took the checker flag because they wanted to see overtime. So instead of having him come down pit road to put the net back up, they let Ryan Blaney race with the window net not attached, not properly attached, because they wanted to make up for their mistake of, jumping the gun. So they let Blaney keep the win. Also, the 2001 race where it started raining just after they took the green flag and half the field wiped out and NASCAR just let them go to their backup cars. Just saying, I don't know why NASCAR is all of a sudden so stringent on enforcing their rules when they have changed, when they have been pretty lax with the rules in the All-Star race before. Especially the 2001 race. So, their only bet for the 5-car to race without Larson was if Hendrick Motorsports could somehow make an arrangement with Trackhouse to allow for Shane Van Gisbergen to suit up. Because, if you remember, SVG, he was All-Star eligible too, due to him winning the Chicago Street Course race last year, and him currently being a full-time Xfinity driver. He just could not secure a ride, and I'm really surprised that Kaulig didn't bring a third car for him to run in retrospect, or they let him run the 16 in place of, I believe, AJ Allmendinger. Well, Allmendinger was locked in due to being a past winner of the Charlotte Roval as well. But why couldn't they just put Shane Van Gisbergen in the 13 car then? Or just run SVG in the 16 and put Allmendinger in the 13? I'm really surprised that Kaulig just didn't think of that. But then again, you get the point. It was either Larson in or the 5-car doesn't race at all, unless Shane Van Gisbergen magically appeared. But yeah, fortunately for the 5 team, and unfortunately for the field, considering that Larson was the defending race winner, he made it to the track with plenty of time to spare too. Larson, his estimated arrival time was 7:15 p.m. and the race was slated to originally start at 8:10, 8:15 p.m. Obviously, NASCAR pushed the start back to 8:30. But NASCAR didn't even need to push the start of the race back because Larson arrived way earlier than we thought. And it was a spectacular entrance too, because the helicopter, it landed just outside the track so the fans could see it. And the moment he landed, they started cheering arguably louder than when Chase Elliott took the lead in any race. So yeah, it was a spectacular entrance. Larson even had time to do an interview pre-race. He even had time to participate in the pre-race and have an interview with Kevin Harvick and Chris Myers. I believe Clint Bowyer was there too. But yeah, it was awesome. He got enough time to get ready, put his fire suit on. I mean, he already had his fire suit on when he landed, but he had time to get some rest and also participate in some pre-race interviews, do a pre-race interview. So that was just awesome. So we now move on to the main event. 200 laps, just like in the Open, there will be an all-star competition caution at lap 100 at halftime for teams to make a mandatory 4-tire pit stop, as well as another caution on lap 150, but pitting on that caution will be optional. So 2 all-star competition cautions. Unlike the Open, however, everyone will start the race with the red letter softer tires. And just like the Open, the heat races were cancelled due to rain, so the field was set via the qualifying speeds that the drivers put on Saturday that were originally going to set the field for the heat races. So Logano, who was supposed to be the pole sitter for Heat 1, he is now the pole of the All-Star race. Brad Keselowski, who was supposed to be the pole sitter for Heat 2, will start second. Christopher Bell, his team won the Pit Crew Challenge, which allowed the 20 team to get the first choice of pit stall. Obviously, they went with pit stall number 1. Christopher Bell started 3rd. Daniel Suarez 4th. Chris Buescher 5th. Tyler Reddick 6th. Ross Chastain 7th. Martin Truex Jr. 8th. Michael McDowell 9th. And AJ Allmendinger 10th. Next, Denny Hamlin 11th. Kyle Larson 12th. He will start from the rear since, like I said, Kevin Harvick, he qualified the car in his place, so he will start from the rear. But just so you know, Kevin Harvick qualified that car in 12th. William Byron in 13th. Kyle Busch in 14th. And Chase Elliott in 15th. Both of these guys got penalized during qualifying due to speeding on pit road. during the time they had to make their 4-tire pit stop. So unfortunately, they got time penalties. That is 10-second penalties. So Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott, they would have both potentially like started somewhere in the top 10, but because of those 10-second penalties, they are down to 14th and 15th. Ricky Stenhouse 16th, Ryan Blaney 17th, and then Ty Gibbs, the All-Star Open winner, 18th, Bubba Wallace 19th, who finished second in the Open, and Noah Gragson, the fan vote winner. So, 20 cars, 200 laps, race begins, and we already have an incident. Not even 2 laps in, and Kyle Busch hits the wall pretty hard, and this was on the first lap actually. He thinks it was Stenhouse who put him in the wall, so he comes back the very next lap and just dumps him on lap 2. Like, what the fuck? It's only lap 2 of an all-star race, of a non-points race. And upon further review, if you look at the replay, Stenhouse did not even touch him. It was pretty close, but Stenhouse did not put Kyle Busch in the wall. Kyle just got up into the wall by himself. Stenhouse didn't do anything wrong. He knows he didn't do anything wrong. So he parks his car in front of the 8 team's pit stall. He gets out of the car, and he has a few words with his crew chief, Randall Burnett, and he has a right to be mad. And in his interview, he stated as such. And I may be a Kyle Busch fan, but this is one incident I just cannot defend. I would be really surprised if Stenhouse does not confront him before this race ends. He was done wrong. That was just wrong. So anyways, we go to pit road. This early caution allowed for most of the field to change back to the primary yellow leather tire. Only Logano, Keselowski, Tyler Reddick, Chris Buescher, and Ryan Blaney stayed out. The race restarts, and Logano continues to lead. But as the round goes on, the drivers on the reds, they start falling off so quickly. And 30 laps into the run, the drivers on the yellows, they start moving up through the field. As the guys on the reds, they start falling off. Led by Christopher Bell, who is the highest running car led on running the yellow primary tire. He's running 5th. Some drivers obviously were also slipping and sliding. Tyler Reddick fell down to 6th after battling a loose race car. Same with Hamlin, who almost spun off of turn 4 while battling with Ross Chastain for 8th. William Byron also had issues. He hit the wall while running in 11th, and he broke the toe link. He went to pit road to fix the issue. He came back, but by then he got fallen multiple laps down in the process. So now we go by lap 80. The guys on yellows, they start posting faster lap times, but not by much, as lap traffic turns out to be a big equalizer. Particularly Bubba Wallace, as he was doing all he could to stay on the lead lap by lap 100, which he eventually did. He stayed on the lead lap by the time the halfway caution came out, giving the free pass to Michael McDowell. And on pit road, with the red leather tires lasting a lot more than what was projected and holding up better than everyone thought they would in the long run, and because there was going to be another caution lap 150, so essentially this long run we just saw was the longest run of the race, everyone and their mother pits for the red leather tires on this caution. Well, everyone not named Ty Gibbs or Tyler Reddick, who went for a yellow primary tire for whatever reason, but Joe Logano won the race of pit road over Chris Buescher, and Christopher Bell moving up to 3rd by virtue of having that number 1 pit stall, while Tyler Reddick drops to 10th. So now we have the restart. The second half of the race begins, and it's Joe Logano and Christopher Bell in the front row. Bell has a great launch on the bottom and stays side by side with the 22 for 5 laps. They bump, they bang. This brings Hamlin into the fold. He takes a 3-1 on the bottom, but Logano hangs tough on the outside and defends the lead when another caution comes out for Ty Gibbs, getting spun out by Kyle Busch again. Like, seriously, what's up with Kyle Busch today? So now we go to pit road. Only Tyler Reddick and Daniel Suarez pit this time. Reddick pits for reds and Suarez pits for yellows. Then we go to the restart. Logano continues to lead, but Hamlin is in 2nd, and Ryan Blaney in 3rd. They both stay close to him while also battling between themselves for position. Blaney manages to get 2nd by the time the next All-Star competition caution flies on lap 150. And this All-Star caution, pitting is optional this time around for this caution, so the top 6 stay out and everyone else pits. Larson, Bubba Wallace, McDowell, Chastain, Kyle Busch, Truex, Suarez. Everyone pits. For everyone who pitted took the red leather tire. Like the yellow leather tire at this point was out of the question. So we go to the restart. Blaney has a terrible restart. He falls down to fourth. Logano continues to lead with Hamlin back up to second. And Kyle Larson, now on fresher tires, he started charging his way through the field, running a bottom middle lane in the corners to go from 7th to 3rd. But unfortunately, this burns his tires like hell, and he's got nothing for the final stretch. So we go to the final laps. It's down to Logano and Hamlin, and the 22 car just holds him off. Logano wins after practically leading the entire race. Well, he led 199 of 200 laps to be exact. I believe Christopher Bell got 1 lap led off of him while they were battling for the lead. Or it could have been Hamlin, I don't know, but Logano led all but 1 lap. It's his second All-Star race win, because if you remember, he also won the 2016 race. It's also the second consecutive win for Ford in the Cup Series. They are so back. After a tough start to the season, this might just be the shot in the arm, this 22 team, and Ford as a whole, they need to turn their season around. But unfortunately for Joey Logano, this is not the moment that got people talking or that people will remember this race for. And not because he won in pretty undramatic fashion, well, that's part of it, but after the race ended, Ricky Stenhouse, he actually confronted Kyle Busch, and he got physical. That's right, we got an actual fight in an all-star race. There were punches thrown, pushing and shoving, and I'm going to talk about this now. I'm not making a separate video because my thoughts are pretty clear-cut for the most part, and this video is running long anyway, so why not add some extra runtime to this feature-length podcast. Also, my upload schedule for coming up is pretty tight. I got two videos I'm working on, not counting obviously the race reviews for Charlotte that are coming up this weekend. And I don't want to add another video on top of it, so I'm just gonna talk about this incident, about this fight between Stenhouse and Kyle Busch. I'm gonna talk about it now. First of all, I'm gonna say shout out to Ricky Stenhouse. He kept his word when he said in his interview that he will deal with Kyle Busch after the race, and he did. Well, obviously, some of that can be attributed to the fact that the tunnels were closed until after the race ended, so he had no choice but to stay on the racetrack. But still, this guy waited in front of the number 8 team's hauler after the race ended and to confront him. The guy stood on business 2 hours after the fact. He had 2 hours to respond, to plot his next move, and he stood on business. And if you watch the several videos that are all over social media by now, you know the conversation went something like this. Ricky getting in his face about the incident, Kyle defending himself, saying Ricky put him in the wall, which is obviously false. This pisses Stenhouse off, and he starts throwing punches. And let's analyze this from both sides. First of all, let's look at Kyle Busch's side. I know Kyle Busch was in the wrong here, but I'm still going to look at his side first. We're talking about a guy who has been raced hard by Stenhouse for the past 6 or 7 years and whom he's had several run-ins with due to that hard racing. The most infamous incident coming at Daytona in July of 2018, that race where Stenhouse infamously wiped out about half the field in just the first quarter of that race. And that right there is where I feel Stenhouse's anger is coming from and why he lost his cool and decided to punch Kyle. It's the fact that Kyle Busch was not giving him the benefit of the doubt, because in the eyes of Kyle Busch, they have a history of run-ins coupled with the reputation that Stenhouse has created for himself in the garage as well as with the fans of being a complete wildcard of a driver. I mean, his nickname on NASCAR social media is Wrecky Spinhouse. So in the perspective of Kyle Busch, you've been caught up in some mess the same guy causes one too many times to justify giving this guy a benefit of the doubt. So why should anything change? Stenhouse was in the vicinity when Kyle Busch got put in the wall. So you automatically think, oh yeah, Stenhouse is at fault. I'm not saying Kyle Busch was right in this particular instance, but what I'm just saying, it's understandable why he doesn't believe a single word Stenhouse tells him. There's just too much history between the two of them for him to just ignore. And Kyle Busch is a way smarter guy than people give him credit for. he remembers a lot of stuff. We're talking about, this is the same guy who claims that he wrecked Ron Hornaday on purpose back in 2011 at Texas for something that happened between them back in 2004. Again, I'm not saying that Kyle Busch was in the right on that particular instance either. And personally, I don't believe 2004 was on his mind when he wrecked Ron Hornaday, but that's a topic for another day. But my point is, when it comes to, getting involved in an incident with another driver, Kyle Busch has the memory of an elephant. He does not forget. He thought Stenhouse put him in the wall because, this is the same guy who wrecked him out at Daytona in 2018 and a guy who has raced him aggressively basically for the past 7 years. So why should Kyle Busch think any different? What has Stenhouse done to make Kyle Busch think that he should give him a pass? But now we're shifting over to Stenhouse's side, which is pretty clear cut. And again, as a Kyle Busch fan, I'm gonna be the first to say this. Stenhouse, he has every right to be pissed. He got taken out on lap 2 of an invitational, non-points, all-star exhibition race for $1 million that he's not even eligible to race for next year. If he doesn't win a race between now and next year's all-star race, he's going to have to race his way in through the Open. And the worst part is, the incident that led to him getting wrecked wasn't even his goddamn fault. Again, in case I haven't made it clear enough, I'm on Stenhouse's side. From the moment he got wrecked to the moment he landed a punch on Kyle, he was in the right to confront him and get physical with him. Even if the way he did was a bit of cheap, as his pit crew had to get involved and his dad too, but in Stenhouse's defense, if you watch the several videos and angles of the fight, you can tell by his body language, he did not want his father to get involved. He was clearly embarrassed at how he grabbed Kyle and started going at it with him. But still, his crew members getting involved, I don't agree with that. Again, props to Stenhouse for standing on business, but the thing I don't agree with with this whole thing was, why does the pit crew, whether Stenhouse wanted his pit crew to get involved or not, it's irrelevant. But why does the pit crew always has to stand behind the back of their driver? Again, props to their pit crew for helping their driver out, but this is this is something that Stenhouse wanted to deal with on his own. So let Stenhouse deal with Kyle on his own. Let Stenhouse deal with Kyle Busch on his own. No need for either the crew members of the 8 or the 47 teams to get in it. Let them throw a couple of punches. After 30 seconds or so, you pull them apart, and that's where the pit crews get involved. But for the start of the fight, at least let the two of them just cuss and throw punches or whatever. Let them go at it. Isn't that what NASCAR is all about? Have at it, boys, and stuff like that. I also don't agree with the fact that Stenhouse was fined $75,000, and this was announced on Wednesday, actually. But yeah, that penalty was way too harsh, especially since no one on the number 8 team got penalized. And again, I cannot stress this enough. I'm not saying that Kyle Busch or anyone on the number 8 team should have been penalized because they were trying to defuse the fight. I'm just saying, no one on the 47 team or Ricky Stenhouse, no one should have been penalized, period. This is supposed to be boys have at it, especially after the exposure and marketing that NASCAR made by promoting that fight. It was all over social media. It even made it on Bleacher Report. And Daniel Suarez, he said it best. It's in really bad taste to penalize a guy for fighting after promoting the hell out of said fight. And several drivers, they echoed that thought, agreeing with Suarez. And I'm agreeing with him too. This is Matt Kenseth getting suspended 2 races, which I still believe to this day, it was a very harsh penalty. Yes, I agree, Kenseth should have been suspended for 1 race, but 2 races was way too harsh. And then to this day, you still see NASCAR putting that video of Kenseth putting Logano in the wall as part of their promotion, especially when it comes to playoff stuff. And next year, 2025, is going to be the 10-year anniversary of that incident. So, without a doubt that incident is going to be all over social media for years to come. And Matt Kenseth, all Matt Kenseth got out of that was a 2-race suspension that I, to this day, still believe it was way too harsh. And as for the fight itself, I'm not going to talk about the fight as much because, fights tend to get out of control in NASCAR. It was all sorts of silly. A lot of memes came out of it, from the shot of Stenhouse waiting for Kyle in front of Kyle Busch's on-hauler, to the shot of, Bob Pucker scrambling while trying to record the action. And don't forget the Andy Petrie facial expression he made during the shouting match Kyle Busch and Stenhouse had after they were separated. And speaking of that shouting match, this was after, the Kyle Busch, the fight had been diffused. They were just like, they got into a shouting match. Stenhouse said, "I'll wreck you at Charlotte." He obviously went on the Corilla Joey podcast, Stacking Pennies, and he said, nah, I wasn't talking about it seriously. It wasn't a hit of the moment thing. Which, again, I don't think he should have been fined for that. Like, I'm not a fan of NASCAR fining people for saying that, like, in the heat of the moment and stuff. We saw that with Nick Sanchez and Matt Crafton last year, and I still don't agree with that Nick Sanchez penalty. But yes, Stenhouse said, "I wreck you at Charlotte," and Kyle Busch responded with, "I don't give a fuck, I suck just as bad as you." That made me laugh and cry at the same time, because it shows that Kyle Busch just doesn't care about getting wrecked, because he's already having the worst season of his career. All I'm going to say is, the meme economy won tonight, guys. We got a lot of juicy memes. And as a Kyle Busch fan, personally, that just fills me with pain, and I'd rather not think about this or talk about this anymore, so let's move on. Let's talk about the finishing results, because that fight just made everyone their mother forget about how overall lackluster that race was. No one is going to remember that Logano won the race. No one is going to remember that Denny Hamlin finished second. No one is going to remember that Chris Buescher got third. He got by Kyle Larson on the last lap after hounding him throughout the final green flag run. No one's going to remember that Kyle Larson finished fourth. And by the way, shout out to Larson, by the way. No practice laps or qualifying, because he was at Indy. He started from the rear at a track where passing is hard, and he still managed to finish top 5. Then Ryan Blaney finished 5th, Bubba Wallace 6th, Ross Chastain 7th, Chase Elliott 8th, Michael McDowell 9th, and Kyle Busch 10th. Fight and all, Kyle Busch finished top 10. Not bad for a guy who allegedly sucks just as bad as Stenhouse. Again, his words, not mine. Noah Gragson finished 11th, Martin Truex finished 12th, Ty Gibbs finished 13th, Tyler Reddick 14th, Suarez 15th, Keselowski 16th, Christopher Bell 17th. Man, despite having the number 1 pit stall, just a terrible race all around for Christopher Bell. Really, I really expected more out of him, honestly. Also, I expected more out of Keselowski and Reddick, especially since they were running like top 10. They just faded out in the long run. Allmendinger 18th, William Byron 19th after hitting the wall and breaking the toe link in the first half of the race. And then Stenhouse 20th. Got unfairly taken out and was hit with heavy penalties for being rightfully angry. Again, NASCAR's officiating never fails to amaze me. As for the race itself, I'm not going to do driver of the day for this race because it's an all-star race. What I like to do for this race is like comparing it to the previous all-star races. And yes, it was better than last year's race because at least there was so much more passing. You can attribute that to the repave. But that's not saying much, especially considering the last 2 to 3 years of all-star races have left much to be desired. There was still no action up front. That red leather soft tire was a bust, at least for this race. It lasted just about as long as the normal tire, and it made lap times that much, and it didn't make lap times that much slower. You could last up to 80 laps on these tires without them falling off significantly to where you would rather have a yellow leather tire for the long run. And with this being a 200 lap race with 2 scheduled competition cautions in between, it made these softer tires basically mandatory if you wanted to compete for the win. Simply put, this entire weekend was essentially carried by 2 drivers who were nowhere near competing for the win, and what's got everyone talking was something that happened off the track between those 2 guys. And again, while it was entertaining to watch, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a good thing that what people will remember the most about this race is a post-race altercation more than the actual winner. Just saying. But yeah, again, the short track package, it needs some working on, yada, yada, yada. It's Coke 600 weekend time. Let's see how well Kyle Larson does in the double. And I'm done.